Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and for today's viewing entertainment we have Kattin, sporting some very suspiciously French-looking pennants, flying from the yardarms of his premium Tier 10 British battleship, HMS Thunderer. HMS Thunderer is basically HMS Conqueror, but the most significant difference is that whereas the Conqueror has 12 slightly bigger than 16-inch guns, the Thunderer only has 8, not quite 18-inch guns. 457mm instead of 419. There are other differences. The Thunderer is much more accurate. It also reloads a little faster, despite the larger caliber. It's generally a more agile ship, but it doesn't have the same heal that the Conqueror does, although it does have an increased charge and a slower cooldown. But when the Thunderer uses the damage repair, it doesn't basically instantly 3D print another ship in the same way that the Conqueror does. Also, the Thunderer has access to a third consumable. Unfortunately, that third consumable is the defensive anti-aircraft fire consumable, and is a complete waste of time, even in a battle where the aircraft carrier on the enemy team is 2 tiers lower than you, as in this case. No, seriously, I'm neither joking nor exaggerating. The inclusion of the defensive AA fire on this ship is just a distraction. Even when the carrier is 2 tiers below you, that consumable serves neither form nor function. Don't believe me? Watch, and you'll see. Anyway, slow start to the battle. And this is going to be a slow battle in general for the first couple of minutes as far as Kattin's concerned. On the bright side, the team do have control of one capture point. Then again, they started the battle in control of that capture point, so it's not exactly a great achievement. Then again, always try to look on the bright side, at least they haven't already lost it. The enemy team have their freebie capture point and are already starting to steal a second. Won't be long before they start stealing a third as well. Actually, while we're talking about the capture points, if I can just focus your attention on the minimap for a moment and just look at the layout of the capture points here on the Greece map. It's the thing that I love about this map in particular, more than anything else. The undeniable fact that when you look at it, the layout of the capture points looks just like a massive cock and balls. Don't tell me you hadn't noticed. Or if you hadn't noticed, now that I've pointed it out, you can never unsee it, can you? You're welcome. Oh look, there's the first casualty. I missed it. What was it? A cruiser of some description. Oh, it was a Chapayev. Okay, so the team have now lost 50% of their radars. So that's a bit of a blow to morale, especially considering that the destroyer, although there is only one on the enemy team, but it is a Yugamo, it's a very, very sneaky destroyer, so keeping that other radar safe should be quite a priority for the team. It wouldn't do to lose the other Chapayev as well, and they've just lost the other Chapayev. So the team is now utterly bereft of radar. And as if that wasn't bad enough, it looks like the enemy team have just completed stealing their second cap, and they're not far away from stealing their third. If you look at the centre of the map in the B cap, the only thing preventing the enemy from controlling 3 of the 4 caps is lone Bismarck. I wonder if we'd like to place our bets as to who the next friendly ship to die is going to be. I mean, just oh wow, they've sunk something. Hooray! Don't worry, things are going to get much, much worse before they start getting any better. What ship was it anyway? Oh, it was a Bismarck. Nah, only a tier 8. The enemy team won't miss him. Meanwhile, Kattin is actually having quite a frustrating time here against the enemy Megami and Georgia. The Megami keeps setting them on fire, and the Georgia's knocked out one of his gun turrets, although not permanently. The frustrating thing here, and I mean the frustrating thing here, not the fact that the majority of the rest of the team are just kind of aimlessly circling around in the middle of the map, and 2 of them have just died, and yes, the Bismarck was first, so there's now no longer anything preventing the enemy team from capturing Bravo. Now the frustrating thing here is that The fact that both the Megami and the Georgia keep giving him flat broadsides to shoot at, and while he is doing respectable amounts of armor-piercing damage, he's only managed to inflict one Citadel hit, and that was on the Megami, which is basically made of Citadels, and keeps giving him broadsides to shoot at. And it's not just Kattin, it's his division mate in the Venezia, and there's a Cheshire parked behind an island. And nobody appears to be able to inflict any meaningful damage on those two enemy ships, who appear to be leading a charmed life. Then again, it might be because the Cheshire just keeps firing high explosive at everything. Wait, Cheshire's Tier 8, what caliber guns does it have? It's a heavy cruiser, right? Heavy cruisers firing high explosives at Megamis makes Little White Mouse cry. Unless, of course, he's firing high explosive at the Georgia, which would be understandable, but if there's a Megami to shoot at, and you're in a heavy cruiser, why are you not shooting at the Megami? Although, hang on a second, the Megami did fly, and again, look at these targets. They're just begging to be paddled. And yet no paddling is forthcoming. Although Kattin did seem to do another 10,000 damage to the Megami, leaving it on perilously low health. There it is. The problem, of course, is that he's just got too much penetration. When you're shooting at more lightly armoured targets, like the Megami, if you can't guarantee a Citadel hit, you're often better off firing high explosive. The high explosive shells are pretty good. They do a large chunk of damage and they have a 63% chance of fire on target. Of course, you're never going to see the huge numbers that you can see if you land multiple effective armour-piercing shots on target with these not quite 18-inch guns. Things have slowed down a lot, haven't they? On the bright side, I suppose the team haven't lost any more points. They still haven't managed to lose the cap they were given at the very start of the game, and have finally gained 200, count them, 200 whole points. Of course, the enemy are 400 points ahead because they have 3 of the caps, and they've sunk more ships. But hang on a second, what glimmer of light is this on the horizon? The enemy Yugamo has been sunk, and we didn't even have a radar. What's going on here? Oh, wait a minute, it all makes sense now. He was spotted by the carrier, wasn't he? That's right. Who needs radar when you've got a carrier? Aircraft carriers, making everything else irrelevant since 2019. Oh, hang on a second. Here comes that Georgia again. He's coming around the corner slightly angled, but then he thinks better of it and straightens the ship out to show a flat broadside to Kattin's 18-inch guns. And I was about to say, he hasn't learned his lesson, but what lesson? He's been sailing around giving flat broadside to everybody the entire game, and so far he just hasn't been punished for it. Which is very surprising with the Thunderer's guns, because the accuracy means that the Thunderer is able to hit targets like that, as you can see, and the higher than average penetration means that it shouldn't over-penetrate targets like that, and should, in fact, be scoring Citadels. But it just isn't happening. So, no lesson has been taught so far in this game for the Georgia to learn. I mean, yeah, he's taken large chunks of armour-piercing damage, but it's a Georgia. It's also armed with 18-inch guns, and has been dishing out large chunks of armour-piercing damage in return, despite the fact that he is currently fighting outnumbered 3. No, he's also being attacked by the friendly carrier 4-1. So the only real lesson that Georgia's learning is, yay, the Georgia's great, it can take anything. And it's a good ship, but it really can't take anything. It's just taken far too long to teach him that lesson. Oh my god, look at that Vladivostok. I think it's at this point that Kattin decided that somebody on the enemy team was finally going to pay the price for sailing around giving flat broadside like that to a battleship armed with a whole bunch of 18-inch guns. The Vladivostok was the one to provide the example. And that seems to have pissed the enemy team off, because now they're all shooting at Kattin. Sinking the Vladivostok hasn't really helped the team. I mean, it certainly hasn't hurt the team, but it hasn't changed the scores either, because at more or less the same time, the enemy team did also manage to sink the Tashkent, the team's only destroyer. So a tier 8 battleship on low health for a tier 9 destroyer, seems like a fairly decent trade to me. Now it's at this point where a couple of things happen off camera. The Georgia has just sunk the Cheshire. But he sunk the Cheshire because the Cheshire decided he was going to YOLO a ship armed with 18-inch guns. The good news is the Cheshire did manage to get his torpedoes away. And there it is. So there's a flesh wound award for the Cheshire. And a fairly good trade, I suppose, given that the Cheshire is a tier 8 cruiser and the Georgia's a tier 9 battleship. But then again, when you're down 4 kills to the enemy's 6, any trade is a bad trade. You need to be sinking ships and not dying yourself. Two things happen around about now. First, Kattin demonstrates just how completely useless the defensive AA consumable is these days, even against a carrier 2 tiers lower than him, attacking without a full squadron and flying through a fighter consumable, but still manages to get 2, not 1, 2 torpedo strikes off against him. Both of the torpedo attacks miss, but, well, that's not really the point, is it? The other thing that happens around about now is, with 1 cap to the enemy's 3, trailing by 400 points, and with the team's survivors either hugging the map border or packed into one corner, this is where the enemy team decide that just winning isn't enough. They have to win harder. And the first victim of the victory disease is the enemy Thunderer. It's a peculiar situation that happens over and over and over again in World of Warships. The enemy team are winning. They've got the points, they've got the caps, they've got the ships. They don't need to keep chasing and shooting at the surviving members of the team. I mean, I appreciate that you want to maximise the amount of damage that you do, because damage means points and points mean prizes, but Kattin's team are the ones that have to push, because they're the ones behind. Kattin's team are the ones who are supposed to be in the position of having to take the risks, because that's what you have to do when you're as far behind as this, and you want to turn the battle around. They're not out of the woods yet, of course. They have just lost the Smolensk, who was in an extremely precarious position, all alone out on the flank. But look at all of these enemy ships. There's no reason for them to be pushing into the survivors. There's plenty of concealment and cover there, and none of them are using any of it. They're just sitting in open water, firing their guns. Most of them on relatively low health, because just winning isn't enough, is it? You have to win harder. Yeah. Oh look, Goliath, tier 10 heavy cruiser. Quite tough for a cruiser, by all accounts. If you angle sufficiently, it will bounce even battleship armor piercing. But if you don't angle sufficiently, all you do is ensure that those armor piercing shells don't overpenetrate. And all of those low health enemy ships who just had to push into open water with all guns blazing because they just had to win a little bit harder. The Cleveland, the Goliath, the Megami, although the Goliath saw the errors of his ways and was at least trying to hide, although too little too late. Yeah, where are they now? Well, they're still 400 points ahead. They still have 3 of the 4 caps. Oh, hang on a second, I was mistaken earlier. This is the point where Kattin demonstrates the utter futility of even bothering to bring the defensive AA consumable. Lexington strike comes in. Okay, he's always going to get the first strike off, and that's 2 torpedo hits that we could have done without, but the aircraft went overhead, taking constant anti-aircraft fire all the way, boosted with the defensive AA consumable, circled back, and they do manage to get a further torpedo away. And speaking of enemy carriers, wait for it, yeah, there it is. Even the Lexington's been infected with victory disease. Okay, to be completely fair, it's not an entirely stupid thing for the Lexington to be doing. It may initially appear as if the Lexington wants to get close enough to start opening up on everybody with his 40mm anti-aircraft guns. But, well, it's actually quite commendable. He's moved the carrier in close, in cover, behind the island, in order to shorten the turnaround of his attack squadrons and maximise their effectiveness. So, it's nice to see a carrier player who's actually thinking about how best to support the team. The problem for the Lexington, and I do have to, well, kind of sympathise to some degree, is that he seriously overestimated his team's ability to snatch victory from the jaws of victory. What did look like a fairly good position when he had a team, now, well, it isn't. Oh, wow. The team just had to win that little bit harder, didn't it? And yet, at the same time, despite the fact that there is now only one ship remaining on the enemy team, they can still win this. The enemy team, that is. You know, not Kattin. I mean, Kattin's team can obviously still win this if they find and kill that last enemy ship, which they're going to have to do, because the enemy team still have a massive points lead. And they still have more caps. Although Kattin's team are flipping Bravo. But Kattin is on such low health that if that surviving cruiser, and it's a Des Moines, so it can push out a lot of damage in a very short space of time, if that Des Moines can set him on fire again, Kattin has no heals and his damage control's on cooldown. And losing a battleship would generate enough points for the enemy team that the Des Moines would only have to survive a few more seconds and the enemy team would win by reaching 1,000 points, as opposed to just trying to hold on to the lead and survive until the end of the match, which would be very difficult for the Des Moines to do because they're always going to know where he is. Kattin's team still have a carrier. Although the Des Moines' window of opportunity is starting to run out, because Kattin's damage control only has 20 seconds left on cooldown. But the Des Moines' 8-inch guns can still do, with a good salvo, in fact it doesn't even need to be that good a salvo, firing high explosive shells, they only have to do 2,221 damage. And Kattin is a dead battleship. And if he can do that, the Des Moines only really needs to hold his breath and count to 10, and he'll win, because he'll reach 1,000 points. So somebody needs to sink that Des Moines, and fast, before he finishes off Kattin. Fortunately for Kattin, the Des Moines is now too close to the island to be able to lob shots over it. He's actually outpositioned himself. Kattin, however, much further away from the island, suffers from no such limitations. So, 300... Wait a minute. What's that language? That looks suspiciously French. Kattin, is there something you haven't been telling us? Wait, let's not jump to conclusions, Jingles. He could be Swiss, he could be Belgian, he could be French-Canadian. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Sorry. I'm English. Those are the rules. If we didn't have rules, where would we be? I'll tell you where we'd be in France. Anyway, cultural expectations aside, seriously well played, and well done on turning that one around. Aided in no small part, of course, by the enemy team just having to win that a little bit harder. That's it for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.